It has been simultaneously encouraging to watch him confident that his knee can handle the pressure, and deeply frustrating to see him playing with his competitive fire just a little too high. That is one swing. Unbelievable piece of hitting. The hand-eye coordination alone gets that done. New York fans walked into Citi Field absolutely certain their pitching staff had cracked the code. They had home field advantage, Juan Soto anchoring their lineup, and what felt like a gift from the baseball gods, news that Shohei Ohtani's left knee was supposed to slow him down considerably. 10 minutes into the game, Ohtani strolled to the plate and turned the entire borough of Queens into a library with a single swing of the bat. So here is the question before we go any further. Who is the one pitcher in all of Major League Baseball with any realistic shot at containing Shohei Ohtani in a full playoff series? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Let us find out if anyone actually has a real answer. Let us walk through exactly what happened when the Los Angeles Dodgers marched into Flushing to take on the New York Mets at Citi Field. New York baseball fans are not exactly known for being gentle or reserved. They show up with enormous personalities, voices loud enough to rattle the upper deck, and a burning desire to psychologically dismantle every opposing superstar who dares set foot on their home turf. When the Dodgers pulled into town, sitting comfortably near the top of the league standings, the electricity inside that stadium was immediate. The Mets were desperately searching for any spark to ignite their homestand. Getting the chance to host Los Angeles handed them the biggest possible stage. With Juan Soto locked into the cleanup spot and a packed Queens crowd primed to erupt at every single pitch, the atmosphere was set for something that felt genuinely important. The Mets pitching staff, led by starter Shawn Manaea, had spent the entire afternoon buried in preparation. Video sessions, iPad screens, data breakdowns. What they put together was what they believed to be a genuinely bulletproof approach for keeping Ohtani manageable. In baseball, when a team prepares for a powerhouse lineup like the Dodgers, the entire game plan tends to collapse down to one core objective. Do not let Ohtani beat you. Pitching coaches will set up sequences designed to make him chase breaking balls just below the strike zone. They will work the pitch clock, trying to disrupt his timing. They will try to attack his hands on the inner half and force him into awkward contact. The Mets looked at their plan, looked at each other, and felt genuinely good about their chances. That confidence had a lifespan of exactly one plate appearance. The moment Ohtani stepped out of the Dodgers dugout wearing that crisp blue jersey, something noticeable happened inside Citi Field. The chaotic noise that had been bouncing around the stadium shifted. The rowdy taunts softened into something closer to nervous energy. Every single set of eyes in the building followed Ohtani from the dugout steps to the batter's box. The Mets' defense shifted into their pre-planned alignment. The catcher dropped his sign. The stadium seemed to inhale and hold. What happened next was a firm reminder that detailed game plans have a ceiling, and that ceiling drops to the floor when the person standing in the box is a once-in-a-generation phenomenon. To fully understand the weight of that at-bat, you need a little context about the days leading up to it. News had surfaced across the league that the Dodgers were carefully monitoring Ohtani's pitching schedule due to persistent irritation in his left knee. Los Angeles made the decision to give him a brief break from starting duties and track his recovery closely. Now put yourself inside the head of an opposing manager when that information hits your inbox. A guy with a banged-up landing leg sounds like a vulnerability. You naturally start calculating. Maybe his rotation through the hitting zone will be a step slower. Maybe the leg drive that generates his impossible exit velocities will be compromised. Maybe he will be protecting the knee subconsciously and not driving through the ball with full commitment. The Mets believed they were getting Ohtani at his most exploitable moment. They forgot one thing that probably seems obvious in retrospect. Shohei Ohtani, at 80%, is still a different species from virtually every healthy hitter in the sport. Before stepping back from pitching duties, Ohtani had already posted some of the most absurd numbers on the mound anyone had seen from a two-way player in the modern era. A 1.79 ERA, an 8-2 record, 95 strikeouts across 85.2 innings pitched, and while the Dodgers were carefully managing his knee, he stepped into a private bullpen session in Philadelphia and fired 31 high-intensity pitches at full velocity just to evaluate where his arm was. The organization called the session encouraging, but they were transparent about the plan going forward. His primary job right now was not pitching. It was making opposing pitchers suffer as the team's designated hitter. So when Ohtani dug his cleats into the dirt at Citi Field, he was not a compromised athlete trying to get by. He was a lion that had been forced to step back from one of his two jobs and had spent the interim building up an enormous amount of competitive energy with nowhere to release it. The Mets thought they were walking into a favorable matchup. They were walking directly into a trap. Let us get specific about what happened when Ohtani stepped in. Coming into the game, his season line already read like a video game stat sheet. 22 home runs, 61 RBI, an elite 919 OPS that sat comfortably among the best marks in all of baseball. The Mets pitcher looked in for the sign and made a decision that is easy to criticize in hindsight and genuinely difficult to fault in the moment. He decided to challenge Ohtani. Throwing a fastball or an elevated cutter directly at Shohei Ohtani in a high-leverage situation is the baseball equivalent of testing a live wire to see if it has electricity. It is technically a choice. The outcome is almost always going to be painful. The pitch came in. Ohtani did not flinch. His hips fired with the kind of explosive rotational precision that makes hitting coaches stop practice to watch film. His hands ripped through the hitting zone. The sound that came off his bat echoed through Citi Field with a sharpness that nobody in the building was quite prepared for. Ohtani went 2 for 4 on the night. He drove in a crucial run with an extra base double that left his bat at well over 105 miles per hour. The Mets outfielders barely had time to track it before the ball was already skipping into the outfield grass. He rounded first base and slid cleanly into second. The Dodgers went on to win the game 4-2 on New York's home turf. In the span of one swing, thousands of screaming New York fans went completely quiet. The chants disappeared. The hecklers set down their drinks. The stadium transformed into something closer to a film screening than a baseball game, the entire crowd watching in stunned silence as Ohtani stood on second base with the calm expression of a person who had just completed a routine errand. Inside the Mets dugout, the broadcast cameras panned across the coaching staff and the bench. The looks on their faces told the whole story. Manaea stared at his glove like it had actively deceived him. The catcher sat motionless in his gear, processing the quiet realization that the carefully constructed strategy had just been publicly dismantled in front of a national audience. Single at-bat drained the Mets of the momentum they had been counting on building. Why does facing Shohei Ohtani feel like a legitimate psychological crisis for opposing pitching staffs? To answer that properly, you have to understand how modern baseball analysis actually works. Teams spend millions of dollars on tracking technology that monitors every micro-movement a hitter makes from the moment he leaves the dugout. Heat maps, swing plane data, launch angle tendencies, zone profiles for every pitch type, in every count, in every game situation. If a hitter has a cold zone, that information gets weaponized by every pitching staff in the league within 48 hours. When pitching coaches open Ohtani's heat map on their screens, they encounter a problem with no clean solution. The chart is essentially red everywhere. Attack him on the inner half, and he uses his extraordinary core strength to turn on the pitch and drive it down the line. Work him away, and he extends those long arms and punishes the ball to the opposite field gap. Try to get him to fish at breaking balls in the dirt, and he adjusts his posture mid-swing and launches them over the center field wall anyway. There is no safe quadrant. There is no reliable out pitch. Trying to get Ohtani out consistently is like attempting to solve a puzzle where every piece connects to every other piece simultaneously. And even the one fallback option, putting him on base intentionally, creates its own separate disaster, because the moment Ohtani reaches first base, he converts into an elite base runner who dissects a pitcher's pickoff timing, gets his jump, and slides into second before the catcher's throw is halfway there. Pitchers get so consumed with managing Ohtani that they lose their mental sharpness completely, and the next hitter, Freddie Freeman, or Mookie Betts, or Teoscar Hernandez, gets something right down the middle because the pitcher is still thinking about the guy who just reached base. It is a completely self-sustaining cycle of damage. To understand how the Dodgers managed to build something this difficult to play against, you have to go back to the contract that started everything. When Ohtani signed his 10-year, $700 million deal with Los Angeles, the reaction across the sport was somewhere between awe and genuine shock. $700 million for a single baseball player. Front offices around the league called it a market-distorting number. Some owners described it quietly as an existential problem for competitive balance. Then people read the actual structure of the contract and realized Ohtani had not just signed a deal. He had engineered a championship strategy. He voluntarily deferred $680 million until after his playing contract expires. During his active career in Los Angeles, his annual salary sits at $2 million per year. $2 million. For the best baseball player on the planet. He did this specifically so the Dodgers could stay clear of luxury tax penalties and spend freely on surrounding him with elite talent. Most professional athletes in the history of sports have been conditioned to want their money immediately. Ohtani looked at $700 million, decided that winning championships was worth more than holding the cash today, and structured his own deal to give his front office a structural competitive advantage over every other team in the league. Other owners filed formal complaints. They called it an unfair distortion of the market, but it was completely legal within the collective bargaining agreement. Ohtani did not just reshape how his own contract worked, he reshaped how sports contracts are conceptualized as competitive tools. And away from the ballpark, the person who turned Queens silent with a doubles into the left-center gap is somehow even more striking. In an era when professional athletes use social media as a vehicle for personal branding, expensive watch collections, and public feuds, Ohtani moves through life with almost monastic simplicity. He gets to the ballpark earlier than almost anyone on the roster. He follows a nutritional plan with military discipline. He sleeps 9 hours a night. He treats clubhouse attendants and stadium workers with the same genuine respect he shows Hall of Fame teammates. One specific moment has stayed with people. When Ohtani decided he wanted to give back to the country that built him, he did not organize a press conference or hire a camera crew to document his generosity. He bought 60,000 custom baseball gloves. He had them delivered directly to more than 20,000 elementary schools across Japan. Every school received 3 gloves, 2 right-handed, 1 left-handed, so every child in the country could play catch during recess. He included a handwritten note. It said simply, "Let us play baseball." No cameras filming his reaction, no social media posts timed for maximum engagement. Just gloves, a note, and 60,000 kids who now had a reason to go outside and throw a baseball around. Coming back to Citi Field on that evening in Queens, the game was a masterclass in a lesson that Major League Baseball keeps relearning. The Mets threw everything they had prepared at him. Manaea mixed his pitches carefully. Relievers came in throwing different looks and different speeds. The defensive alignment adjusted based on spray chart data. The crowd gave them every decibel of support New York can generate. None of it moved the needle. Because when the player standing in the box has that level of physical ability, that degree of mental stillness, and that depth of competitive experience, strategy eventually becomes an educated guess. You can throw inside. You can bounce sliders. You can hope the knee slows him down for one night. But as the Mets discovered in a 4-2 loss on their own field, when Ohtani finds his pitch, the result is already determined before the ball even reaches the warning track. The Dodgers are moving through the 2026 season with their hands wrapped tightly around their division, and Ohtani continues to reset the outer limits of what this sport thought was achievable. Every single time he steps onto a baseball field. New York came into that game believing they had a real chance to quiet him. What they got instead was a front-row seat to history. The Mets found out the same thing every other pitching staff eventually discovers. You do not silence a legend, you just watch. Hit the like button if you believe Ohtani is dragging the Dodgers straight to another World Series title this October, and subscribe to the channel for more high-stakes baseball breakdowns every single week.